We had many arguments and I didn't actually see a way out of our issues.
There were times where I just think that there was a future for us anymore. I became so immersed in my own world. It really, really pushed us to the edge where there were so many times that I just wanted to walk out.
We could have easily separated then, but I wasn't going to give up on him. I know that God had a plan for us. I was a cradle Catholic and very proud of it. My family were very strong in their faith. They took us to different prayer groups, every Sunday to Mass. We were very close to each other and I grew up in a very loving and stable family.
I was born a Catholic. However, after my parents divorced, I was never raised as a Catholic. I knew God existed. I never really knew God at all. When my parents divorced, my mother remarried, it was quite a tumultuous upbringing, a verbally and sometimes physically abusive mother and not a very supportive stepfather. So I lived for a while in my early to late teens in and out of refuges. So that's why at the age of 17, I joined the Australian Army, and part of the intent of that was I needed some kind of direction in my life. And it's because of the Army that I actually got to meet Louise. I met her through mutual friends.
I always wanted to find someone that I could really connect with as a friend. And when I met Bruce, I really felt that. I felt that we were old-time friends. We had known each other for ages. The conversation just was really easy to get along with. The only thing that sort of stopped me with Bruce was that he wasn't Catholic. And it also sort of rocked my family a little bit. I think they always envisioned that I would either become a nun or I would marry a Catholic, just like our family. So when Bruce came and visited the family, my parents were a little bit standoffish with that, I have to admit. But the fact that he was actually willing to come to Mass with us and get to know our faith, I think that became their mission over the next couple of years, is to try and nurture him and show him what a Catholic family and what faith really meant to us. When
she said to me, she goes, "We're going to go to Mass, do you want to come?" And I'd never had an invite like that before, but it was something that I'd been longing for such a long time that, I said, well, I'm going to do this. And, you know, it really filled a void in my life, like finding God through her family, and to know that she was so nurturing of that. She saw that it was something that I really needed, and it just came so natural to her. We got married at St. Mary's Cathedral. The beginning of marriage was fantastic. It was really, really exciting, and you know, you're proud to introduce that this is my wife. This is not just, this is my girlfriend, this is my fiance, this is my wife. We had challenges through the course of my duties. I was working for the New South Wales government in law enforcement, and my colleagues and I were effecting an arrest that turned badly. And as a result of that, it was a career-ending assault that involved me having many surgeries, including a jaw reconstruction and a few other things. And that was hard. It was really, really difficult. As part of that, I developed a bit of anxiety, depression. That kind of led me down a very dark kind of path where I turned to alcohol. And borderline became an alcoholic. And yes, it created a lot of tension, it created arguments. Alcohol
was like his crutch at that time. He was depending on that because when he was drinking, he didn't have to think about the incident that happened. And he tried to push that away, but instead of forgetting about what was happening, it actually made things worse, because when he was drinking, he was pushing himself away from me, away from our son, away from God. And he probably didn't see it at that time. He probably just saw it as it's helping take away my pain, take away me thinking about what happened.
I guess it made me become someone that I didn't like, I wasn't comfortable with, and I knew that was affecting Louise, and I knew that it was also affecting our now very young child.
I didn't understand why he was sort of acting that way. It became very divided. It became that we were focused on our own problems instead of how it used to be, where we were focused on each other. And I think that really took a toll on our relationship. I think that was probably the hardest thing, was seeing how it was affecting Chase. I didn't quite know what to do.
There was a lot of arguments and Mum was crying a lot, and I didn't understand any of it, and I thought sometimes that it was a bit of my fault. But Mum reassured me that it wasn't, and that it was just some challenges that they had to go through, that every couple goes through challenges.
I became a person I didn't like, and it got to the point where I even said to Louise, maybe you should spend more time with your parents, and I need to get myself sorted out. And it changed who I was, it changed my personality, it changed my behaviours, and that impacted greatly on Louise. I looked for excuses all the time. I played that blame game very easily. I'd often blame her for, I'd say, you don't understand, or you don't know what it feels like, or you're not making an effort to be in my shoes. And when all along, like, she lived every moment of that, like I did, but I made things pretty difficult. And it wasn't intentional. That's just what depression does.
We pretty much had lost everything. So our friend offered for us to stay at her parents' place because they were away in Greece at the time. And she was only going to charge us $300 rent a month. And that was going to help us out dramatically because Bruce was not able to work at that time. So when I came home one day, Bruce was there with his friend drinking, and I couldn't take it anymore. I just didn't know what else to do. And we got into such an argument that I said to him, I have to take Chase and I have to go. So I spent quite a few nights at my parents'. I didn't give up on him, not at all. It's just I needed to take Chase away from that situation. And at that time, I think that break was needed. I still contacted Bruce and I still reached out to him, but that time was really hard for us. I sort of felt like I was alone at that time. I didn't feel God in that situation. At one point, the police were called and I was arrested and put in a mental health facility for my own benefit. And at that time I felt really, really alone. And I thought, how could Louise love me? How could my family love me? How can my friends depend on me? How can anyone depend on me? And she even had people saying to her, you know, it's okay if you leave him. It's all right, we would understand. When he was taken by the police, that was really hard because he blamed me for that situation. So when he was taken away, I tried to go visit him and he didn't want to see me. So that was really hard at that time. I just turned to God. I called on my community and I asked them to pray for him. At the time it was hard because you not only feel lost, but you feel a lot of shame. You feel like you failed in your relationship. And you also feel like you failed in your faith because there's so many times where you feel like you've lost trust in God. And especially growing up as a Catholic, growing up surrounded by faith, I think I really felt like I was disappointed in myself for not trusting God.
There were times where I just didn't think that there was a future for us anymore. It's a matter of, like, I became so immersed in my own world about the whole court procedure, the operations, the how I was feeling. I felt that I was broken. I felt that I wasn't able to support my family financially. We were stuffed. We lost a lot of our possessions, and it created a lot of fights and arguments. It really, really pushed us to the edge where there were so many times that I just wanted to walk out. And it's not because I didn't love her, it's just I couldn't handle it. I just couldn't handle the fights anymore. I couldn't handle the arguments. I couldn't handle feeling the way I did. But a big part of it was I generally believed that she didn't understand how I felt and how I was suffering. And so part of me felt neglected by that. It's not that she's ignorant or anything else, but unless you physically experience something, you can only imagine how it would feel. The things that I said and did really hurt her a lot. She had that opportunity, and a valid opportunity, to walk away. And she didn't. She stuck by me through thick and thin. And it's in that moment that you realise that when you make that commitment of the sacrament of marriage, that this is the right person for me. I know that I've made the right decision because she's still here, even when she didn't have to. So I think she took the sacrament of marriage very, very seriously, that through thick and thin, through sickness and health, through richer or poorer.
I think that's the turning point where he realised, hey, she's been there for me, God's been there for me, and we can make this work. So I think that was the turning point in our trials.
When I got arrested and taken to the mental health facility at Bankstown, you're kind of forced into spending time with your thoughts. You're segregated away from everyone. Even though I didn't want to see Louise, a part of me wanted to see her as well, because I was surrounded by people who, in my mind, they were pretty crazy kind of people. And I started to rationalise me not needing to be there because I was nothing like them. And I think that was a really, really difficult time, because there was no one to convince me that what I was doing was wrong or right. No one to tell me that feeling this way was perfectly acceptable or not acceptable. And so it was a real challenge. And I know whenever I was with Louise, faith being the very centre of her family life and her personal life, sometimes those little nuggets of wisdom they stick to you. And I remember her just saying, if you leave everything in God's hands, then eventually you see God's hands in everything, and just to lean into Him and trust Him. And I wanted nothing more than to get out of that place. And I had people telling me, if you just tell them this, you tell them that, they'll let you go. And I thought, well, there's no honesty in that. And if I'm here, it's for a reason. And if I deny the reason or the process, or reject the process, then I'm not really getting help. And it was a really, really tough lesson. I contemplated not just my life, my physical life, but my life with Louise. How is that going to be different when I leave here? Is she still going to want me? Am I going to get to know my son? It was a really scary time. But what I did find is when they let me go and I was allowed to leave, the first person that was there to greet me was Louise. And just so much love and so much support from her, and not just her, but her family. Going back to her mum and dad's house, I was scared to think what they were going to think of me, but that was very quickly put to rest when you walk in that front door and they just embrace you and they hug you and they say, we've been praying for you, and just know that no matter what you go through, we love you. And I never really had that from my parents. It was a beautiful moment, and it's something that I treasured and I valued. And I started to see that, God gives us challenges and He will put obstacles in front of us, but when you lean into him and you surrender to what he's trying to tell you, you start to see the beauty in life, and you start to see the people that are generally there for you, that care about you, that love you. So that was a turning point. I thought, you know, if I want this part of this journey to continue, I need to make some very, very significant changes.
So when Bruce sort of turned back, wanting to change, wanting to turn back to God, I highly recommended him to go talk to our local priest. So that was a real turning point for him, being able to not only open up to our priest, but also to be able to acknowledge that he needed to change, and I also needed to change. I needed to work with him and start praying together. That was a massive change for us, spending time and actually praying together. When we actually started to do that, we realised that we both needed to be on the same page and start being intentional with our relationship, but also with our faith. We started to cheer each other on. We started to set goals together. We started to actually have family time scheduled, which was really good. It didn't seem natural at first, but we soon started to realise that when we spent time together, when we were having fun, we stopped worrying about our worries. It was just those little things, making a cup of tea for each other, or Bruce putting a note on my pillow when, you know, he had left for work. Those little moments, those little memories, I think was what made our relationship so much stronger. I think sometimes we can think of the extravagant present instead of those little things that make us smile. So
I think a big part of it as well is coming to the realisation that you truly are worthy. Worthy of each other's love, worthy of God's love. I do rely on her much as she relies on me, and there's so much that we could give each other, and the reward for that was a very loving relationship where all the anger and the emotional upset and torment really start to fade away. And from there, like we were very positive on the prospects of our future. We kind of started to see how this would pan out in such a positive way, and we started making those plans of what our future would look like.
we felt Jesus calling us out onto the water. We heard him calling us to join Marriage Encounter. Quite a few of our parish community had been through Marriage Encounter, and at that time we sort of felt our relationship was at that point where we were ready to take that next step. So we decided to go on the weekend. Bruce was a little bit unsure. He didn't didn't like sharing his feelings in front of people, but I knew that we had to go, and I loved that he made the effort.
I think by the end of it, I got more out of it. The reward for me was so much greater. And what it did is it opened up communication pathways with each other. It helped us to begin to understand the way each other's feeling and the thought process behind it. Well, I feel like this and this is what it makes me do. But it's not just the communication between us, and that communication with God got so much stronger as well. And I felt that was really, really important. And by the end, I was beyond grateful.
We talk about our day a lot more. So if I know he's had a hard day, I know that, hey, when he comes home, make him a cup of tea and talk to him about it. Whereas before, I think we had so many issues that I was running to work and having that time out. I didn't want to think about what was happening at home. So now we spend a lot more time together, whereas before we sort of were having separate lives. So yeah, we're just communicating better, we're getting along a lot better, and it's definitely benefiting our son as well. And the people around us, they can see the transformation, especially the ones that told me to sort of give up on him, and going, wow, it's good that you didn't do that.
I've become less self-centered. I stopped thinking about myself and how whatever I do is going to benefit me. I come to realise that my actions come with consequences, and now how it's going to affect my family, my friends, my work, my physical and social life. And it's helped me realise that not just for my son, but for his friends as well, that I need to be an example. Boys look up to their dads and say, well, this is how you treat a woman, or this is how you look a man in the eye before you shake his hand. And so I get he's impressionable, like all kids are, that I see the value and the importance of whatever I do is going to reflect onto him.
I started to notice that we spent a lot more family time together. We started doing family meetings so that we would be more caught up in each other's lives. We started planning out everything. We went on more family vacations. We just drove around to places.
Going to confession, recognising pride that I had in blaming him for things that he had no control over. And I think a lot of that, joining our church community and serving our community has brought so much fruit to our family life and to our relationship. There's no fairy tale marriage. It doesn't just happen that Prince Charming turns up and life is happily, life is nice, yeah, okay. Happily ever after. It takes work, it takes prayers, it takes surrendering to God. And I think that's what we really needed to do, was surrender to God and to pray and to call onto community and call upon each other.
Are you searching for fulfillment? Discover true happiness. Stay tuned to Shalom World.